Hello, everyone. Hello out there. Everyone out there joining. We're super excited. Today, we are going to have a wonderful conversation. And whether you are watching live and with us here right now, or whether you watch the replay, we want to welcome you to the conversation. And today, I'm super excited to have a conversation with Bob Burg. And he is one of the co authors of the Go Giver series, which if you have not purchased it, I'll probably say this 10 times. If you have not purchased it, I highly recommend it. I happened to listen to the book on audio, which was absolutely fantastic to hear you and David narrate this in your own voices and to see what it really means to you. So let me tell you a little bit about who my guest is today. For over 30 years, Bob Burg has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their business growth. Although for years he was best known for his sales classic Endless Referrals, it is it's his business parable, The Go Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. And I totally agree with that. While it is part of a four-part book series, The Go Giver itself has sold more than 1 million copies and been translated into 30 languages. It was rated number 10 on Inc.'s magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written, and was on HubSpot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is the founder of the Go Giver Community Network, the first of its kind for an online business community created by and for Go Givers. He's an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people we serve. He is also an unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors of Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his own home in his town of Jupiter, Florida. So I love that. Furry friends. What fun. And don't they just bring you so much joy, Bob? So first of all, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you for having me. And yes, they do bring us a lot of joy.
Oh my goodness. So I was just in Ecuador working with the team there. And they were sharing that they had recently revised some of their practices to allow pets inside and that sort of thing. And just the joy and how it changed the spirit and the energy when they allowed the pets to be included in the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What a great point. So true.
Absolutely. So Brett is out there. He's joining us. Greetings from Las Vegas. Thank you so much for joining us, Brett. Great to see you. And I hope you've got some questions out there for us. So let's dive in. So Bob, I reached out to you after having read the Go Giver book. And then I needed more. I wanted more. So I then went on. Everything I do in my world is really about leadership. And so I went on to then get the Go Giver Leader and read that book as well. And just absolutely loved not only the books themselves, but the way they are structured, I think is easy and digestible. So my first question to you is just give us a baseline foundation of what the Go Giver book and series is about.
Sure. It's a series of 4 books, although John, my co-author, and his wife, Anna, wrote another one, which I'll tell you about later, but which I didn't have anything to do with, but it's still part of the series. But the 4 that John and I wrote together 3 of them are business parables. So they're short stories, fiction with success-based principles, and a lot of incidents that really happened that we put into the book as part of the story. The basic premise really of all of them is, Rhonda, simply this, that shifting your focus, and this is really where it all begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's also the most financially profitable way as well. And not for any kind of way out there, over the top, woo-woo type of magical, mystical reasons. Not at all. It's actually very, very logical, very rational when you think about it. And this is really whether you're in sales or leadership, when you're that person who can take your focus off of yourself and instead place it on serving others, discovering their needs, their wants, their desires. When you can move off of yourself and onto helping others solve their challenges and problems, when you can take your eyes off of yourself and instead focus on bringing or helping another person move closer to
Mhm.
happiness, people feel good about you. They feel great about you. They want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to do business with you. They want to follow you. They want to tell others about you. They want to be part of your army or part of your network of personal walking ambassadors. And that's really the overriding premise of all of the books.
So So I think that that is incredibly powerful, and I think sometimes we get caught up in our day-to-day busyness, and we're really not intentional, and we're not really thoughtful about how we're really serving and showing up. So, Bob, did you always like? Were you born a go-giver? Like, did you just pop out one day and say, "All right, the go-giver concept is me and who I am," or did this develop for you over time?
That's a great question. I was very fortunate to grow up with wonderful parents who uh, they emulated this very thing. I mean, the word "go giver" wasn't a word that was used, but certainly it was what I witnessed just by growing up as my parents' children. And I know John also had wonderful parents, and he saw the same thing. Um, so I think that was always there as part of my belief system. Now, going into business and seeing different types of people doing things in different ways, some that were productive, some that were counterproductive, some that I thought were helpful, and some that was just the opposite. Um, I kind of saw a pattern in John when we got together on this to write the story. He agreed, and we both did as we studied successful people, that there were certain things that people did in a certain way that tend to predictably bring about success. And one of them is that they were always looking for how they could bring value to the lives of others, how they
Mhm.
could make other people's lives better, not in a self-sacrificial way, not as a martyr, not as a doormat, not at all, but simply in a way of understanding that to the degree that you are able to help other people succeed, that's the degree that you're going to succeed. Whether we're talking sales, whether we're talking leadership, whether we're talking friendship, whether we're talking really anything, that's just how it works. So I think as I saw that, and I saw that, and I knew I wanted to emulate those kinds of people, and that's really, I think it is. So it was all part of it.
No, that's great. And it, very simply, it's your willingness and ability to serve others, right? That sort of brings you that back. So there's a line in the book when Pindar is speaking, and he said that many people see life as competition instead of one of co-creation.
Right.
And tell us what you mean by that. So I firmly believe that we are co-creators of our life and everything that happens within it. What do you and John mean when you talk about co-creation?
So in his magnificent 1910 classic called The Science of Getting Rich, the author Wallace D. Wattles talked about the difference between living on the creative plane and living on the competitive plane. The creative plane is one of limitlessness, okay? The competitive plane is one of that fixed pie, right? Where there's only
Mm,
so much, and if you want to succeed, you've got to take this away from someone else. Now, so we're big believers on living on the creative plane. Now, that does not mean that you don't have competition. Of course you do. Unless you're one of those rare people that somehow has discovered something that. But no, most of us, of course, we have competition, and it doesn't mean we don't pay attention to them. It doesn't mean we don't learn about them. It doesn't, right? All those that it's important, but we don't focus on the competition. You don't
mhm,
focus on the competition. You focus on the value that you can create for others. In this case, your prospects, customers, clients, and so forth. So we're living as, again, creators and co-creators, as opposed to to living on a plane that's just the focus is on the competition, which tends to bring everyone down, as opposed to creation, which rises everyone up.
Hmm. It's interesting because I also think that often when we are in that competitive mindset and space, we are allowing our competition to dictate our actions, which just seems weird.
Very
Weird to me.
absolutely.
Yeah.
If you're focused on your competition, what you're going to be doing is being reactive to them and to
Mm,
that, and it's just not a way to sustain. Now, again, and I always want to make sure people don't, take this to the illogical end and say, oh, then just, don't just imagine you don't have any competition. There's no competition. Oh, sure there is, but it's just the way we approach it, right?
mhm.
And I think that's the big thing.
Absolutely. I want to definitely. So, if you're out there watching, welcome. This is a conversation with Bob Burg, co-author of the Go Giver series. And we're really talking about the Go Giver concept and how it applies today. We've got a question from Brett, and I want to ensure that if you have questions, I will sort of set my time aside a bit for our audience because this is about service. And I want to hear what all of you have to say and what questions you have about the Go Giving concept. So Brett says, great work, Bob. Relevancy should be a core trait of all leaders. Do you find that in today's world, say this pandemic era economy, a large proportion of leaders are truly relevant, and why? So if we're looking at that relevancy, what do you think about Brett's question?
Well, first, it's a great question. We always want to make sure we define our terms. So, I would have to, in a sense, ask if he means something very specific about relevancy that I may not be thinking of. Okay, so when I think of relevancy, it's well, it sort of almost defines itself, but it's being engaged on a level that is productive to the entire process. That's in a sense relevancy. So is today's leader relevant? Well,
Mhm.
today's leader has to be relevant if they want a culture that is going to be productive and that is going to be fulfilling and is going to be happy and is going to be profitable. So, it all, I think it was Dr. John Maxwell who said everything rises and falls on leadership.
Mhm.
So relevancy, my friend Bill Cates wrote a great book called Radical Relevancy. Now he wrote that for salespeople, but it's for everybody, right?
Mhm.
So again, depending upon how you're defining relevancy, I think it's the most important thing of all.
Well, so I love that because I think that you just hit something that I find when I'm interacting and coaching leaders, and we have a leadership training academy, and we talk about this constantly is leaders who are stuck in the past, right? And so there has been always a way. So when I think about Brett's question, some of what I think about is why don't we have more workplaces where people are happy and satisfied? And as Brett says, we've got the great resignation and we've got quiet quitting and quiet firing and all of these terms happening. I feel like if we were more connected to the go giver concept, Bob,
Thank you.
it might help to mitigate some of this. Are you familiar with some of these terms, quiet quitting and all of that? And do you
At
see
this
that
point,
same
everybody. Yeah.
connection?
Yeah, one of the best books I could ever suggest that you read, and I knowing you as I do, you'll love it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that is called Everybody Matters, and it's by a guy by the name of Bob Chapman. He is the chairman and CEO of a manufacturing company by the name of Barry Waymiller out in St. Louis, but they have factories all over the world, and they've got thousands and thousands and thousands of employees, tens of thousands, and they have his book was fascinating, and I got to interview him, and he's a fascinating individual. But he really, and he came from that original, just very numbers driven, very data driven. And when he did that, and this is 30 years ago, he was successful, but it was up and down. It was
Right.
up and down, right? Uh, Once he adopted this philosophy, and I'll tell you what happened, and I'll make the story very short, and I can't tell it as well as he does, but it's a wonderful story. He was at a wedding of his best friend's daughter, and during the toast, the father was welcoming the son-in-law into the family, And as far part of the father's toast, he said something like, that as we welcome you into our family, please know that the young woman you are marrying is the little girl that my wife and I raised, and who my
Mm,
wife and I loved and cherished. And he went on, and at that point, Bob Chapman had an epiphany, and that is every single one of the tens of thousands of employees at Barry Waymiller is somebody's cherished son or daughter,
mm,
and that he had a responsibility to be part of their family and make them feel cherished, make them feel welcome. So he has a company where the culture is so very inclusive of every single employee. And there's lots of training, and there's lots of personal development, and there's lots of relationship building. And I mean, they have come through, they came through the 2008 financial crisis in a way that they really walked their talk, and people were wondering, were they going to do that when the pressure was on? And yes, they did. And they're a hugely profitable and financially stable company. And talk about relevancy, right? And talk about that culture of family. There's nothing soft about that, as some people want to say.
mhm,
Absolutely not at all. When you have people who, and professors Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, University of Rochester, who came up with the self-determination theory, which tapped into the natural tendency for people to aim to grow. And it's, again,
mhm,
it's natural, and how it work that makes itself happen. And it's through three basic areas. One is autonomy. That's people having a sense of control of their destiny. Okay.
mhm,
Two is competency. Okay. And that is people having the tools to be able to learn and grow, become excellent at what they do, having a sense of mastery. And that is also very, very important for people to feel good about themselves. Third was relationship. And that is people wanted to come to a place to work where they felt part of something bigger than
mhm,
themselves.
mhm,
Right. So you look at Mr. Chapman, and you look at doctors, professors Deci and Ryan, and you look at all the wonderful leaders out there who've done wonderful, fantastic things, and you think, why doesn't everybody do this when it's right? But that's the world as it is. We're constantly growing and constantly learning and evolving, and you hope over time uh that's the case.
Wow, really powerful story. I love the culture that he developed, because I think that is the key to everything in business. It begins and ends with leaders who are intentional about creating the culture that they
Yeah,
want in their
intentional.
organizations, right?
Absolutely.
And I think, unfortunately, Bob, what happens sometimes is we think that culture is just going to magically happen. We think, oh, well, we're good people. So, of course, we'll have a good culture. And I see good people who have an awful
Oh,
culture all the
absolutely.
time,
Yeah.
all the
Oh,
time.
you're so right on. No question about it. It does not happen by itself, and it doesn't happen just because you want it. You've got to, Stephen M. R. Covey, who wrote Dr. Covey's son of Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen M. R. Covey is one of my very favorite leadership authorities, and he wrote a great book years ago, The Speed of Trust,
Mhm,
where it was all about trust is what makes everything happen, and happen quickly, right? Because there's a tax to be paid for lack of trust, right?
mhm.
But he also wrote another book recently. I'm sorry, I thought I had it right in front of me or right on the shelf, but I actually didn't, and I don't want to take up your time.
Sure.
But it was, but it talks about moving from command and control to trust and inspire, and the name of the book is Trust and Inspire, and
Hmm.
it's a wonderful book, and it really changes the game. But you think about that with command and control. We know it doesn't work. It doesn't work in business. It doesn't work in the military. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, who wrote the Extreme Ownership,
Extreme
uh,
ownership.
uh,
Yeah.
they said the same thing. In at one point they talked about that. That their commanding officers learned something that military forces for thousands of years have come to learn. Just ordering people, command and control, doesn't work.
Right.
Because if people don't know why they're doing it, right? Again, they don't have that sense of ownership. They don't have that sense of, if they don't know why they're not as engaged, they don't have the buy-in to this. And they can't fight their best when they don't know why they're doing it. That's human nature. It's not going to change. So, we continue to hear reports, and I don't know how true this is or not, but we hear reports 75% of corporate employees feel disengaged from their work. How could that even be in today's times? But, again, it is what it is.
It is. It's a stunning statistic, and I talk about it frequently because organizations are always searching for the next big thing, right? They're going out and going, hey, we're rolling out this program and it's going to help us with engagement. Hey, we're doing this next thing and it's all about engagement. And I'm like, engagement starts with you as the leader, right? So really, you don't have to go by much. But you do need to invest in your leaders and help them understand how they are showing up in a way that influences, inspires, encourages, lifts, grows, all of that, right? So I love that. There's something in the book that I want to get to that you talk about, because I think we're taught it so often that as we are negotiating and we're looking for wins and we're working with our teams, we should go for the 50-50, right? A win-win situation, something where both of you come out on top. That is the ultimate place you want to be. I was surprised in the book, you say, yeah, not so much. So can you tell us why win-win is not the winning proposition?
Well, so here it is. That's such a wonderful question and great point. So the lesson for Joe, who was the protege in the story, was that 50-50 is a losing proposition. Okay. What we really want to have is simply 100. And that is, we put total focus on bringing immense value to another human being. Okay. When we do this and we connect with others who are of the same mindset, wow, the power that goes back and forth and throughout that, that network of people is amazing. When he said, Sam said to Joe, forget about win-win. Win-win's a losing proposition. Make it about the other person's win. So here's the thing. Win-win is actually, of course, great. That is the highest you can be. The point was, and what Sam explained, was that some people say win-win when what they really mean is, I want to make sure I don't lose. Right? And so what do? They start really, again, living in that competitive plane rather than the creative plane. And that's what happens. So yeah, we love win-win. It's just that we need to make sure that when we say win-win, we really mean win-win. Not I want to win and make sure I don't lose, or what have you.
Well, I think that's great, but I'm hearing a theme. So when we're talking about leaders and command and control types of mindsets, and we're talking about someone who is really playing not to lose instead of, to win, I feel and see an undercurrent of fear, right? It's fear-based. It is, oh my goodness, my people are not going to do hard work if I'm not commanding and control. If I'm not cracking the whip, they're not going to do what they're going to take advantage of me. Or, oh my goodness, we'll never get to this place we want to be if I don't toe the line, and if I don't show up as that strong, sort of presence that's really driving instead of inspiring and motivating. And if I go into this 50-50, well, I should come out on top. Right? Well, why am I not at the top of, this pile or this pie or what have you? So do you think that fear plays a role? And if I am that fear-based person, how do I begin to shift into a mindset of giving? No, I don't know. How would I do that?
So I think most negative action is the result of fear. Right. And that's why people will do something that has a negative result, or, that is a negative action that will most likely result in a negative. It's fear-based. And so the first thing we need to understand, and I think this is so very important, is that again, being a go-giver simply means you understand the benefit of focusing on bringing immense value to others. It doesn't mean that you're going to allow yourself to be taken advantage of, right? It doesn't mean you're going to put yourself in a position where someone is not. It doesn't mean you're going to say to somebody, "Hey, we'd love to have you in for your, 8 hours a day, but nah, if you don't want to, just take the day off. We'll pay you anyway." No, I mean that's not right. So no, you do set um you do set parameters. There are expectations in any agreement, whether it's between a buyer and a seller, two spouses, friends, employees, employers. There's always an agreement. It's a voluntary agreement between two people, too, right?
Mhm.
And between two or more people, whatever it happens to be. And so yeah, definitely. Now, but here's where the focusing on the other person comes in. Let's say you are that leader, and you want someone to follow you, right? I mean, by the very nature of being in leadership, you've got followers.
Right.
You're right. I think again, John Maxwell says, if you look back and find no one's following you, you're just on a walk or
Right.
something like that. So the question is, how do we act in a certain way that causes people to willingly want to follow us?
Mhm.
And this is where influence comes into play. Influence by its very definition is the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within a specific goal. But that's the definition. I don't think that's its essence, though. I think the essence of leadership and influence is
Mm.
pull as opposed to push. How far can you push a rope? Not very far, at least not very fast or very effectively. How far can you pull one? Well, as far as you want. Um, push is compliance. That's that first boss you were talking about, right?
Mhm.
Uh, pull is commitment. How much further do you go when you have people's commitment as opposed to compliance, right? So that commitment, that's pull, that's an attraction. Great leaders, great influencers um, attract people first to
Mhm.
themselves and then to their ideas. How does this pull manifest itself? It's first understanding Dale Carnegie's basic premise. I believe it was his basic premise of his classic How to Win Friends and Influence People. And this is where Mr. Carnegie wrote that um, ultimately people do things for their reasons, not our reasons, right?
Right.
And so the great leader, the great influencer constantly asks themselves questions such as how um, how does this person who I want to do this certain thing, how does it align with their goals? How does it align with their needs, with their wants, with their desires? How does what I'm asking this other person to do, how does it align with their values? How am I helping them to get to where they want to go?
Mhm.
And when asking ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, uh, genuinely, authentically, not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of benefiting everyone in the process.
Mhm.
I think we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment as opposed to trying to depend on some type of compliance. Or as one of my great friends, she's a wonderful leadership authority. Her name is Dondi Scumaci, as she wonderfully puts it, when it comes to leadership and influence, compliance will never take you where commitment can go.
Wow. Wow, what a great way to end. I know we're at the end of our time. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, Bob. I want to give you just an opportunity to share any last words with those who might be listening either now or later. And then also to say anything you'd like to share about your Go Giver community, because I think that it's fabulous that you have a community around helping people to understand and execute and operationalize these concepts.
Oh, thank you. I think the last thought or suggestion would be something I learned from a mentor of mine years ago. And that's, and he said this in terms of sales, but it's the same with leadership and anything else. He said, if you want to make a lot of money in sales, he said, don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. When you hit the target, he said, you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money. And you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget, he said, the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It isn't the target itself. Your target is serving others. I think when we remember that, then we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
Hmm.
Uh, and Rhonda, as far as the Go Giver community goes, which we invite everyone to come and check out, that is at thegogivercommunity.com. So it's without the hyphen, and it's not thegogiver.com, but thegogivercommunity.com. And people can also find more information at my website, burg.com.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here. I hope that those listening have picked up a few gems and nuggets that will allow them to show up a little bit differently in service of others, with that big picture in mind. So, my name is Rhonda Y. Williams. I'm the host of the Coffee with Rhonda show and founder of Leadership Above the Grind Mentoring and Coaching Academy. It's been a real pleasure to be here, Bob. I thank you so much for your time and for your fabulous conversation and your gift to the world. That's how I view the Go Giver series. It is a gift to the world, and I encourage everyone, go out and pick up the book. You will not, be sad that you did. It is an amazing book and series. So thank you so much, Bob. Have a
Thank you.
fantastic rest of your day, everyone. Wishing you a great and wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. Bye, everyone.